year. Global growth will be choked amid inflation and war, says World Bank. For large and small nations around the globe, the hope of averting a recession is fading, the World Bank warned on Thursday. Yes, that is true, and I've been telling you guys for the longest time that we are in a financial crunch. But, you know, some nations feel it more than others. Obviously, industrialized nations are not feeling it as much as poorer nations. You understand? So, and that is why you end up seeing things like what the gentleman was talking about, where people gotta go crash, parties so they can get some food to eat. It's terrible. It's terrible. And I don't know, I can't even predict, or I don't even want to predict or know how the next 2 years are going to shape out for a lot of underdeveloped nations. It's terrible. Anyway, let's see. COVID related lockdowns in China and dizzying rises in energy and food prices are battering economies all along the income ladder. For those of you who are faithful listeners, you will recall that on the audio podcast. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed, stop whatever you're doing right now and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. I'll give you a minute to do that. All right. Um so yeah, for those of you who are faithful listeners to the audio podcast, and for those of you who want to know how to catch the audio podcast, that is the banner behind me. The link at the very top in red, that is the audio podcast link. So click on that. When you go there, you'll see a subscribe button. You click on the subscribe button. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcast and Google Podcast and all that other stuff. And also don't forget to like us on Facebook. But anyway, I did an episode a while back. This was sometime last year, where I was talking about how, you know, when COVID struck and people were told to stay in their homes, okay, I read an article where they were talking about how a lot of underdeveloped nations didn't have, not that they didn't have, well, maybe they didn't have, but then again, they didn't have systems in place to feed their populace. Okay, so you're telling your people to stay at home, but if they stay at home, how are they going to eat? They haven't stored food. Okay, they can't go to the marketplace because you told them to stay at home. So what are they supposed to do? And I use the example of Taiwan, okay, as a model for great leadership, because Taiwanese leaders from about a decade ago, when they had some kind of pandemic, I think it was the bird flu or swine flu or something, they immediately recognized the need to store food, because they realized that if something like this happens again, and the World Food Bank, is auctioning off food, because that's what happens. Okay, you got to go and auction for food, and of course, wealthier nations will always have the money to win the bids for food and stuff. Not to mention that they also always have, reserves. And I was saying how African leaders, have not put in place systems like this so that Africa, as a continent which has the most arable land on the planet, and so there's no need for any African to go hungry because we have the land and the land is fertile. You would think African leaders would have said or would have done the same thing that Taiwanese leaders did. Because the Taiwanese, what they did was they started buying food and they started storing it. I think they themselves are producers of, I don't know, wheat or something. I can't remember what the article was. But I did a whole show on this. And they had been storing food for about 10 years. And so when Corona hit and the ships were not moving, cargo was not moving, food was not moving from one place, one part of the planet to another, guess what? The Taiwanese had stored up enough food to last them about 3 years. 3 years. Taiwanese leaders had done everything to ensure that their people would not starve, while the rest of the world, especially Africa, you had African leaders putting food in pickup trucks, cooked food, by the way, and trying to go and distribute them in neighborhoods. And even at that, there was an ulterior motive to it in that they weren't distributing it in a manner that was equitable. They would so any politician, if he knew he was up for election, would get a couple of pickup trucks of food and take it to his constituency. This was during the lockdown in Ghana. I saw videos of this. Whole throngs of people, crowds of people, in the middle of lockdown, in the middle, at the peak of Corona. People not wearing masks. Just thousands of people just standing there waiting to get some food. Why? Because the nation for the longest time hadn't stored any food. And I talked about it on the episode. I can't remember what episode number that was, but I went into detail about it. And again, this is the reason why you need to subscribe to the audio podcast. If you subscribe to the audio podcast, a lot of things that I say now on YouTube, you will be able to make the connections. So, click on the, type in the link at the very top of the banner and subscribe. Go to the website, click on subscribe. And also, if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, please go ahead and do that now. Let's see what